We know those washers are the shims that sit over the O-ring on both sides. Take our bearings. I'm gonna attempt to clean these. Let's take a close-up on this front outdrive. We do have some lash wear, and what happens is that as you apply heavy throttle, so the outdrive set is on the power side and this is connected to the wheel. And as you apply the power, the outdrive set kicks, pop, and there's this lash. So this lash right here, pop. With that lash, when you apply the power, boom, in a heavy, this is basically where this cup is riding. While there's no issues with performance with this, you can actually see where as the motor kicks and throws the power to the front end, this is where this wear is actually coming from. So just the load, the sheer load as that outdrive turns is actually making that little cup. And then when you look at the fresh one, there's almost no play on a fresh outdrive. I think the only thing that we're actually going to be replacing is going to be the front outdrives and the center outdrive set. Everything else looks like there's no wear, and I don't think there's going to be any issues remating these parts in the new one. So we're just going to let these soak for a bit in some CLP, hopefully get some of that diff fluid off, get these cleaned up, and then we'll be back in a minute. We did make contact with Losi and figure out that they recommend a 7K diff fluid for the front and a 10K diff fluid for the rear. So we're going to go with that recommendation and run that 7K up front. It's actually done a decent job breaking down some of these oils. Time to rebuild this front diff. We're going to put our fast eddy bearing set that we matched to the other ones, which is a seal bearing. Start with that. We're going to take our black high pressure grease and hit these outdrives in the corner here. A little bead. And we're going to hit a little bead through the hole that holds the pin until we see it squirt out the other end. There we go. While we have the high pressure grease out, we're going to do both outdrive sets. So through the hole until we see the other side. Little bead on the bottom. Going to take our single outdrive through the back. And we're just going to take a cloth and get the excess. We're going to take our pin, grab it on the side at a 90. And I'll start in one of the long channels, kind of get it worked there, and then set the outdrive to match. And we just want to center that pin right up in there. We're going to take our 7000 diff fluid and we're just going to do a little, just enough so that that gear has something to sit in. Take our gear, set that down in there, do a little bit more diff fluid. We're just going to spin this outdrive just to get a little bit of that to seat. There we go. Take our first gear set. We're just going to drop it in, lining up on one of these long tubes. And these center pins are notched, so we're going to line that center pin notch facing up to mate with the top pin. Here's our top gear set. And then we're just going to give it just a little spritz in these corners, just to get it behind everything. And when we put on this top gear, it's probably going to squeeze some of that out. Going to take our other bearing. Right there. Set our outdrive right there. Excess. Center that pin. And I'm going to do a dab of 7K right here on the pin head. I do like to see a little bit of diff fluid kind of purge out when I do set that. Okay. You can see we are purging. And voila, we got a rebuilt front differential ready to rock with some 7K oil. And once again, we are going to tap into our fast eddy bearing kit and just grab a couple bearings to match the ones that we pulled off of the center diff. We just got a little bit of O-ring grease in there. We got our spacer set, and we're going to prep our outdrive set. Same thing, we're going to black grease through the hole until it comes out the other side. And just a little bead right around the base. And make sure you get your bearing on your diff casing. Send the outdrive in. Get your pin. You can see these longer strips going left to right like a plus sign. You just line up the hole of the center outdrive and then slip your pin in through that. We got our pin inside. Horizon Hobby did recommend 10,000 weight in the center diff, and that's what we're gonna run with. So I do like to put a little bead on top of the outdrive shaft so that the gear has something to sit on. And the gear shaft actually has a little flat nook cut into the center of the shaft. And that's what we're going to orientate so it's facing up so that the other gear shaft goes down into that like a Lincoln log set. Just a little bit of downward pressure, make sure that those are synced up in there. We're just going to take a little bit more of our 10K and get in some of these little nooks and crannies here. You definitely don't really want to overfill it. So when you put on that other gear, you want that distance to actually take up so the fluid basically might purge out of the screw holes. So we just popped the bearing out of that transmission housing, going to replace it with another fast eddies replacement. And you know what, I decided I am going to overfill this a little bit. I'm just going to ensure that our gasket is lined up. Set this on. And then just take note when you're putting the transmission back together, there is one short screw, and that short screw sits in the bottom right hand corner if you're looking at it through this orientation. And you can always just line it up by sticking the screw over the top and making sure that, you know, it doesn't protrude. So if we were to take one of these and stick it up, you could see that it's almost coming into that channel. So we are going to use some of this high pressure black grease inside on these gears and just make sure that we got some lubrication in there. There was almost none, but I think we're going to run with it and see. And I believe that transmission is done. I got some of that black grease prepped on this gear that'll mate up to that pinion from the motor, and looking pretty good. On to the next step.